Hello and welcome to this very special bonus episode of the All Indians Matter in-depth limited series, Gandhi The Beginning. I am Ashraf Engineer. Over the 4 episodes of the series, we journeyed through Mahatma Gandhi's earliest years to understand his earliest influences and how he transformed from an awkward, unconfident child to become a mass leader. Our guide through this journey was Tushar Gandhi, great-grandson of the Mahatma, peace activist and author. In this episode, Tushar and I thought we'd talk a little about what it was like for him to grow up in a family that was different or at least looked at differently. I wanted to understand what it was like to live with the Gandhi name and legacy, whether it was a burden or a privilege or something else altogether. So Tushar, welcome once again.
Thank you, Ashraf. Thank you so much.
Do you first realize that there's something different about your family?
Very surprisingly, I can't remember the precise moment when I discovered that I was part of a special family, or there was a legacy that I had which made me special from others. It was just as I can't ever tell you if you ask me what was the time or date when I took my first step independently, or I uttered the first coherent word. It was like that. I can't pinpoint whether it was, when I was 2 years of age or 6 years of age, or when I discovered that this was. I believed it was the atmosphere of that time when Bapu's contemporaries were still alive and active, that in my childhood, ever since I recollect, I knew that these people were like part of family. And maybe, later on when I realized that not all families were like this, is when I started realizing that we were special. But I remember playing in the lap of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, who was the Prime Minister. I remember sitting in the lap of Sardar Patel's daughter, Maniba, and not referring to her as Maniben Patel formally, but always referring to her as Maniba, because that's what we called her in the family. And all these things, like the names that later on I read in the textbooks, were household names for me. They were like, I was always told that these are the ashram family. And I never knew the difference between the biological family and the ashram family. It was just one parivar that we were. So I can't answer that question. I can't tell you this was the point at which I woke up to the realization. The responsibilities and things, the expectations of the people, what I started understanding much later in my life.
I recall one conversation we had where you said that when Panditji would visit Mumbai, he would actually set aside sort of a D&D time, do not disturb
Yes.
time, only for your family, and
Yes.
you would have to go to Raj Bhavan for that.
Yes. And it used to be very funny that he had set up a rule that my father had to write a letter to him once in a month. And many a times my father, that time we didn't have a phone at home, my father would receive a phone call from the Prime Minister's office in his office, reminding him that the Prime Minister was waiting for the overdue letter, kind of thing. So that was the kind of relationship that till my parents, until Panditji was active and alive, we had with that family. And so those privileges were there.
Now, all families discuss their past generations. What kind of conversations did you have when it came to the past generations?
It was mostly about the interactions of my father and the experiences that my father had during his childhood and youth, and the memories of my grandmother, who lived off and on with Bapu and Ba in the ashrams from Sabarmati to Sevagram, and many other times. Because I was born after Bapu was murdered and after my grandfather passed away. So I didn't interact with them. But fortunately, because my father and grandmother had, so their memories were the ones that were told to me firsthand. And then, as I told you, the contemporaries of Bapu would be visiting home and things. And so many of their memories got transferred to me just listening into the conversations that they were having while they were at our home.
In fact, I was going to ask that your father, Arun, would have met and stayed with Bapu for quite a while. And what were the favorite stories of yours that he would say?
Oh, on the whole, because my grandfather was sent back to South Africa. His children were born and brought up in South Africa in Phoenix Ashram. But my father had the good fortune of cumulatively spending about 2.5 years with his grandfather and grandmother. And so he had a lot of memories from that. And most of my childhood stories were culled from those memories. The experiences he had, the lessons he learned from his grandfather, and things. So,
Which was your favorite?
well, there were lots of them that were favorites. Initially, the hilarious ones were my most favorite stories, and one of them stayed with me, and it's a very very telling comment on what has been done to the Gandhi legacy today, which featured my aunt, my father's younger sister Ela. And this was a time when they used to come periodically to visit. The family would come from South Africa and stay at the ashram for a few months before going back. And what would happen was that the children would be sent first, and the children would stay longer before their parents came. And this was a time when my father and his younger sister had come and were living in Sevagram with Bapu. And after about a week or 10 days, my aunt was very agitated. She was 6 years old, 6 or 7 years old. And she was very agitated, and she went to Bapu and said, Bapu, I have a question to ask you. So he said, everybody said, oh, what is this? Why is Ela wasting Bapu's time? Things. But Bapu said, okay, you can ask me a question when everybody is given time to ask me questions. This evening after the prayers, you can stand up and ask your question. So they said, okay. And my aunt got ready, and when her name was called out, she got up and she says, Bapu, you have named your ashram wrong. So everybody said, oh, what is this? This child is being frivolous, she doesn't know what she's speaking. And they tried to shut her up. Bapu said, no, I think there's something troubling her. Let her ask. What is the question you want to ask? So he says, Bapu, you have named your ashram Sevagram, but you should name it Kaddugram. That is pumpkin. Kaddu is pumpkin. So Bapu said, why do you say that? And he said, I have been in your ashram for 10 days, and every time I say I'm hungry, they serve me a slice of boiled pumpkin and a dry roti. And now I'm so fed up that I don't even feel hungry anymore. So if you're only having kaddu, then you name this place as Kaddugram, which will be appropriate. Don't call it Sevagram. Now, by this time, Bapu was not eating cooked foods and things. He ate raw vegetables and juices and fruits and goat's milk and things. And he would mix all of it together in one bowl and then eat it. And I think I'm thankful I was not present that time. So he called the kitchen guy and he said, why is it that you are only feeding everybody kaddu? So he said, Bapu, you've said we have got to be self-reliant. And I get kaddu from the farm, so I cook kaddu. What else do I do? So then the Bapu called the farm guy and he said, what's wrong? Why are you only serving kaddu? He said, just now kaddus are growing in abundance in my farm. So I'm supplying kaddu. So then Bapu asked him, he said, is there something unique in the soil of Sevagram that no matter what you plant, it will only push up kaddus? Now, see, it's a funny story, but there's a deep lesson in this. That human nature is to find the easy way out. Now, Bapu has said, be self-reliant. So we are growing our food and consuming our food. Easiest thing is to grow kaddu. One pumpkin, even today, in the limited soil that we have in Mumbai, you buy a wedge of pumpkin with a few seeds in it. We throw the seeds on the ground. After the monsoon, a creeper will take root. And if you're lucky, within 2 or 3 months, a pumpkin will emerge from it. And one pumpkin can feed a lot of people. And when it's just plain, blandly boiled pumpkin, How much of it can you eat here? So it was an easy way out. We being self-reliant, we being growing our own what we consume, and that's the end of the story. So Bapu asked him. He said, "Can't you grow peas? Can't you grow cauliflower? Can't you grow tomatoes in this soil? I told you to be self-reliant. I didn't restrict you to say that you can only grow one crop in a year." But today, if you look at Gandhian philosophy and ideology, it ends with khadi, it ends with vegetarianism, it ends with spinning wheel. But the innovation that he talked about, that keep pushing your boundaries, keep expanding the concept of Swadeshi and self-reliance. Didn't say cramp yourself, confine yourself. He said expand. But we've cramped ourselves, we've confined ourselves.
And speaking of expanding imagination,
Yeah.
there's this story which sounds incredible, is that Bapu managed a football team in South Africa.
Well, as a successful barrister in South Africa, he owned a football team which was called the Satyagrahi team.
He owned it.
He owned it. And you see, there was a team of Indian expats living in South Africa who came together to form a club. They didn't have a sponsor. They didn't have a thing, so they couldn't formally sing. And that time, Bapu was a successful barrister, so they came to him and said, "Become our patron." I said, "Yes, we'll call you Satyagraha team, and you play in the South African Natal League."
So no fouls presumably on the court.
I don't know if there were any fouls or not, but for a long time, till he was in South Africa, he was the patron. There's a photograph of Bapu wearing the team jersey and with the whole team, the Verulam Satyagrahis.
So coming back to your growing up years, was there a sense that there is a legacy to live up to and it's a responsibility you will need to carry all your life? And how did you see this? As a burden or as a privilege?
Ashraf, I was very privileged to have my grandmother who broke me into the legacy very smoothly and taught me to take it easily. She told me a story. She said, I was like I was a sapling that had sprouted in the shade of a huge big tree. And she said, it's up to you whether you treat the shade that the tree provides as a burden or as a boon. Is up to you. If you treat it as a burden, you'll shrivel up and be stunted. And if you treat it as a boon, you'll thrive and grow on your own. You'll never be able to move out of the shade of the tree or outgrow the tree. But how you treat it is up to you. And I decided that I was going to treat it as a boon, as a safety net. I was going to thrive under it. So I have never attempted to live up to the expectations of people. People have many expectations. Many a times when they see me, they get disappointed because there is no resemblance to Bapu that they expect me to have. Many a times I'm not wearing the regulation khadi. So that disappoints them. Many of them are shocked when they see me munching on a leg of chicken and things, but I don't hide it. I say, look, I am an ordinary human being and accept me as I am. I'm not living up to your expectation of the descendant of Mahatma Gandhi because the greatness is not inherited. It has to be earned. He earned it himself. He didn't inherit it. There were certain qualities, there were certain traits that might have come into me also. But that's about it. I was asked by a CNN celebrity anchor whether there was a DNA of greatness and whether I had inherited the DNA of greatness in me. And I told him that greatness doesn't come through DNA. It comes through actions and you've got to earn it. And I haven't.
What was it like in school? Were you treated differently?
I was treated differently because from standard 1 to standard 10, I studied in a school established by a Satyagrahi couple. So they were Gandhians in nature. And so when I took admission to that school, I became from the parivar kind of thing. And so my identity, my family identity was always in the forefront. Uh, in after the fifth, when history became a serious subject and we started learning the history of the freedom movement, I was the only guy in class whose family members were mentioned in the textbook. And so the whole classroom would turn towards me while the teacher was teaching history and look at me kind of thing. And it so happened that even my children experienced the same thing. And they would come and tell me, they said, Dad, everybody turns around and looks at us when this history is being taught. I said, that's what happens, you can't help it.
As a young person, you're not always equipped to deal with the attention and even the hate that can be directed towards Gandhi. How did you cope with that when you were young?
It was very troubling. Initially, it was troubling. It used to pain me. Many times I remember I used to break down and cry. I used to feel very angry. That was the time when Mayavati was on a rampage against Bapu, and she and her people attacked the Rajghat and desecrated it and damaged it and things, and it was widely reported. I remember sitting at home and crying. The rage was at the impotency I felt. I felt that I wasn't able to, why couldn't I retaliate? I wanted to retaliate. And I felt that impotence of not being able to retaliate, because I think I was not also aware of the Gandhian ideology and the ideals. And so I was responding in the normal kind of a fashion. Then, as my study of Bapu, and not only as the human being but as an ideal, deepened, I equipped myself to deal with it. Now I deal with it every day, because with social media, the amount of abuse is, unparalleled.
Yeah,
and every morning it happens.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to ask you that you said in the series that we've done in the past that justifications for Gandhi's actions were demanded from you and perhaps still are.
Yeah.
That must have been unsettling growing up. I'm sure it's even unsettling even now. But
Growing up, I was insulated because it wasn't coming into the house. It would be once in a blue moon, a report in the newspaper of a politician making insinuation, or somebody or the other saying something in a function. Now it is right on my smartphone device, because I have Twitter and I have Facebook and I have other social media things where they have access to me totally and unrestricted. So every morning when I pick up my phone, I said, let's see what more abuse has been heaped on me. Is there any new abuse that's coming my way, or things? But now I'm much more equipped, so it doesn't trouble me as much.
you've also been transparent that you don't follow all of Gandhi's principles, such as vegetarianism. You just mentioned that you eat meat. How do you reconcile that with work to propagate Gandhi's philosophy?
Well, one thing is that I am very honest about my frailties. I don't hide that. There was an instance, when I was contesting elections from Samajwadi Party. It was the time of Ramzan when my candidacy was announced, and the whole campaign period was during Ramzan. So every evening I was taken to iftars to interact with the community, and they actually had a cordon of volunteers who were told that I was to be kept away from the biryanis and the kebabs and everything while the media was there. And they would keep telling me, Tushar bhai, there is provision for you in the room. We'll go into the room and then you can eat. And I said, no. If I'm going to eat, I'm going to eat over here in public, or not at all. And that was the only Ramzan, Ashraf, that I remained a vegetarian. I said, I will not hide and eat non-vegetarian. I will eat it in public and face the criticism if there is any. I will not do it behind closed doors. That has been the philosophy of my life. That I've done what I do in public. I've never hidden things. People, I remember once I was invited for a lecture in Kerala. and the MLA came from Kerala to meet me and invite me. And the day he landed up at my home, I was wearing a T-shirt and shorts. And so we had all the talks, and he went back. The next day, the local contact who was supposed to make all the arrangements, he called me up and he said, "Sir, do you have a kurta pajama?" I said, "Yes, I do have a kurta pajama." So he said, "Please pack that when you come to Kerala." He said, "I've been told that if you don't have a kurta pajama, I'll take you to the Khadi Bandar and buy you kurta pajamas." So these kind of things happen.
You also criticize some of Gandhi's actions, such as his opposing your grandfather's marriage to a Muslim woman. And I think we've both said that there is a need to look beyond the legendary status of the man to the human being himself who had his flaws.
Yeah. And see, basically, we criticize Gandhi because we judge him from the Mahatma status. And we say Mahatma means next to God. And so he has to be perfect. And so if then we perceive a mistake, we are merciless in our criticism and abuse. And I say, why do you do that? Look at him as a human being. He was a human being just as frail as us. But he was constantly striving to better himself. You may criticize him for a mistake, but you will never be able to criticize him for repeating that mistake. Every time he discovered that he was wrong, he atoned for that, he admitted his mistake, and he changed and corrected himself and ensured that he never made that mistake again. Learn from that journey. And that is where I always say that my mission is to liberate Mohandas from the shackles of the Mahatma and make him more believable.
Absolutely. And it's been a few generations now since Gandhi. Obviously, the family is large and spread out. Is there a sense also that it's not a legacy that you have to carry anymore, that you just want to live your lives as regular people and not be identified as a Gandhi? There can be something that gets in the way of life.
It could. And I know many of my cousins go to great lengths to hide their legacy, to not make it apparent that they are descendants of Gandhi. I haven't tried that, so I get accused of being an attention seeker also. But I don't go around wearing a T-shirt saying I'm Gandhi's great-grandson, kind of thing. Many a times I'm accused of being an egoist because I haven't disclosed my entity to people, and they discover it later on. And they say, "Oh, why? You're snobbish. Why didn't you tell us you were who you are?" Initially, when I was not publicly known so much, many a times, I would be introduced, I would be in a social gathering, and I would be introduced as Tushar Gandhi, and they would say, "Oh, hello, how are you? Good to meet you." And then somebody would come and say, "You know who he is? He's the great-grandson of Mahatma Gandhi." And they would grab my hand and, "Oh, hello, how are you?" And the whole welcome and greeting would change and all that. And then sometimes people would say, "Why didn't you tell us that? Why did you have to hide it? Are you embarrassed?" Things. I said, no matter what I do, I'm going to get the flack. So I'm very comfortable with it. You want to treat me as the great-grandson? Welcome. You don't want to treat me as the great-grandson? Welcome.
Then how are your children handling it?
I have never forced them to live, to obey the legacy. I said, I took it on voluntarily. You do what you like, my daughter now is becoming more and more conscious of the responsibility of the legacy. My son, in his own way, is also taking up the legacy. But I keep telling them, I'm doing my thing, I'm doing it voluntarily. You don't do it as a compulsion. Because if they start doing it as a compulsion, then it will become frustrating. I said, take your time.
Now, the family has by and large, not completely, but by and large stayed away from active politics. Although Rajmohan Gandhi did take part in active politics, you contested an election. Has this been a conscious decision? And if yes, what drove it?
The generation immediately after Bapu, his sons, took a conscious decision not to enter politics. Otherwise, any one of the three had displayed need to have a political career, the doors would have been wide open for them. They didn't. And so the break happened at that point itself. And so it wasn't a natural progression. My uncle, Rajmohan Gandhi, chose to get into electoral politics on his own at a much later date. Before him, another aunt, the daughter of Ramdas Gandhi, Sumitra Gandhi Kulkarni, she was a two-term Rajya Sabha MP. Then she was also nominated to the, Vajpayee formed the Constitution Amendment Committee. She was nominated to that. A couple of times she wanted to contest as the vice president candidate and things. So we've had our flirtations with
I think Rajmohan Gandhi was
politics.
also talked about as a potential presidential
No,
candidate.
that was his younger brother, Gopal Krishna Gandhi,
Gopal Krishna Gandhi.
who was the former governor of
Absolutely, I stand
Calcutta and
corrected.
Bihar.
Yeah, you're right. Tushar, Gandhi has been under attack over the past decade, perhaps even more. How does the family view this, and what does it think it can do about it?
Well, I can't reply on behalf of the whole family, but I know that most of us have accepted it as a part of our legacy, that we are going to be put under that kind of scrutiny. He is going to be put under that kind of scrutiny. When it is completely sacrilegious and defamatory and based on lies, then we do stand up for it. Like recently there was this accusation by Sambhaji Bhide, who cast scandalous aspersions on Bapu's mother's character and father's character and things, and on Bapu's parentage in thing. And I felt very hurt by that, because till now they had confined their abuse to Bapu. Now they were going to his parents also. And I didn't, so I filed police complaints against him. I'm pursuing a criminal case against him in court, just to make a statement that this will not be tolerated. There is a limit to my tolerance.
Sambhaji Bhide, of course, is the right-wing ideologue.
He's the gutter mouth.
In balance, and I think you're in your 60s,
Yeah.
has your view of the Gandhi legacy, as you say, you choose to sort of, live up to it or try to live up to it and do something about that philosophy. In your balance, do you think being a Gandhi has been a burden or a privilege?
I hate you for this question.
Oh my God.
How dare you disclose my age?
No, I didn't. I just said in your 60s.
No, Ashraf, no. I am very easy with the legacy. I've always been very easy with the legacy, because I have not cared about what people perceive me to be. I just leave it to... There are people who think I'm a very arrogant guy. I said, fine, you're welcome to do that. I'm not going to come and try to convince you that I'm not arrogant. You're welcome to your assumption. I'm not changing for you. And so that way, I have found it very easy to live with my legacy. And many a times I disappoint people, that they feel that I'm not... Like just recently, I was in Jodhpur, and a young man who discovered who I was and my identity, and he came and said, "Oh, asli hai to fir nakli kyun raj kar rahe hain?" I said, "What do you mean? What is asli and what is nakli?" Now, he was alluding to the whole debate that the Nehru Gandhi family are the impersonators and we are the real McCoy. And I said, no, that's not true. They have their right to the name Gandhi. There is no exclusivity to the name Gandhi. And they have performed. They have served the country for 4 generations. If that doesn't earn one the right, what does? Just because I descend from somebody who was pivotal in the freedom movement, doesn't 4 generations down the line doesn't continue to give me that privilege automatically. I have to earn it. They've earned it. Indira Gandhi earned it. Between her and Jawaharlal Nehru, there was Lal Bahadur Shastri. She earned her spurs in the party. She got her office and she retained it. Okay, Rajiv got it after her. But then that was also, he also had his abilities, they made the sacrifices. Now it's come down to Rahul. He has also earned the spurs. The amount of abuse that man has endured, and with dignity, in a dignified manner, is praiseworthy. And, more than me, even though I have been abused, his great grandfather has been abused even more, in a more vile manner. And he himself has suffered abuse. He has to suffer the abuse heaped on his mother. And in the most uncivilized, uncouth language, right from the Prime Minister to almost all the members of his cabinet have indulged in that. And after that, if you are going to say they are Nakli Gandhis and you are Asli Gandhi, that you don't understand the ideology of Gandhi. Because that Nakli Gandhi and Asli Gandhi comes from the feudal mindset of caste hierarchies. That only Brahmins are privileged and the hierarchies and all that. You're basing your judgment on those kind of prejudices. And so I don't feel, and I empathize with Rahul, because I feel that he has gone through fire to come to this level. And we can't just keep claiming that he has got it on the silver platter. Actually, he's got a whole load of shit thrown on his head.
Yeah, and as far as I'm concerned, my view is that looking at him, it's one of the great political transformations of our time. I mean, just the sheer persistence in the face of abuse and
slander and ridicule,
and not just him but every member of his family, and to keep going and going and going, and then to have performed the way they did in the last Lok Sabha elections is astounding. How do you plan to keep the flame alive in the years to come? Now, especially in this time when majoritarian forces have been on the ascendant and there are attempts to deify Nathuram Godse, the Mahatma's murderer, and all sorts of misinformation is being spread about Gandhi.
Well, I keep using all the avenues open to me to talk about Bapu. Just 2 days back, I was at a private university in Jodhpur talking to a class of students. And all sorts of questions were asked, and what was revelation to the students was that I did not refuse to answer any of the questions. I answered. So I just keep trying my best. I said, look, you may not be satisfied with my answer, but if you ask me a question, I'm going to answer it to the best of my ability. Whether you want to accept it or not, I leave it to you. I'm not bothered. So I keep doing that, and I don't get swayed by the applause. Neither do I get dejected by if the audience remains unmoved. I said, okay, fine, I tried my best.
I'm glad you mentioned students, because All Indians Matter is primarily targeted at young people. The inspiration for it came from the students that I teach. And I'm hoping that not just the general podcast, but series like these are heard by more and more young people, or as many young people as possible. Is there a way that people, especially the young, can participate and keep Gandhi alive in this day and age? Because, at least in my view, it's very, very important because of what the country is experiencing at this moment.
I think Gandhi thrives the most at adverse times. He does not matter that much when things are hunky-dory. And so the 60s and 70s were the time when we thought he's dispensable. But in the 90s, suddenly the realization happened that, oh my God, are we slipping back into the bad periods? And post 2002, that anxiety has grown continuously. Although the hate and the prejudices have also grown and riven our country. But the result of the 2024 elections also points to the anxiety of the electorate saying, अगर ये 400 पार हुए तो सत्यानाश हो जाएगा. That fear is where they said, okay, we're going to peg you down to manageable numbers and teach you a lesson. And it is a result of that anxiety, the fear that these guys, if they get a brute majority, they might just completely change the complexion of our country. And that is what works, and that has been growing in our society. While the rabid element seems to be on the ascendance, silently the sane element is also catching up.
Yeah, and I found that, a lot of this democratic spirit that you're talking about actually is coming from rural India more than urban India.
The anxiety is also more in the rural India. The distress, the rural distress is one of the greatest reasons for the change that we are seeing coming about.
Tushar, thanks so much for your enthusiasm and candor. I hope and pray for the success of your efforts and that you go from strength to strength.
Well, success doesn't bother me, Ashraf. I just know that I have to keep trying. The result will be, maybe I will enjoy the fruits of my labor. Maybe I'll just be like a farmer who planted the seed and nurtured the sapling till it became a tree. And maybe the generations to come will enjoy the fruits. But everyone who enjoys the fruits will some way or the other acknowledge my labor. And I think that is what we all should do. Everybody asks me, can you audit the results of your efforts? I said, I'm not bothered. I'm not impressed or depressed by the numbers. Even if I can start the process of change in one mind, I will feel it is successful, because at least I stopped that one mind from being poisoned. And I think that's more than enough for me.
Thank you, Tushar.
Thanks. You're most welcome.
If you like what you heard, please follow this podcast and share it with your friends and family. Thank you.